This is the largest explosion in recorded human history. A huge fireball streaked across the night sky, lighting up the forest below like a massive fireworks. People felt the heat of its explosion thousands of kilometers away. And when scientists finally tracked down the source of the blast, it was nowhere to be seen. It's one of the greatest mysteries of all time, and today we're going to tell you all about it. This is the Tunguska event. It's hard to say exactly when modern civilization began, but chances are that if you've been alive for more than 20 years, you probably witnessed a spectacular fireworks display at least once. Firework displays can feature fountains of sparkling light, long-lasting blooms and crackling bursts of energy. They're beautiful and impressive, but none of them can compare to the scale of what happened over Siberia in 1908. On June of that year, the people of Siberia witnessed the explosion of the century. The night was dark and clear, perfect for stargazing. So when a brilliant fireball streaked across the sky around 1 a.m., it instantly drew their attention. It wasn't just any old meteor, though. Eyewitnesses reported that the object was as bright as the sun, and it left behind a white smoke trail. Those who saw it compared it to the flash of a camera or the brilliance of a massive lightning strike. Then there was the sound. One witness later recalled, "It was something awful, horrible, like the noise of a locomotive when it collides with something, only much louder." That noise was actually the sound of the explosion. As the fireball streaked across the night sky, it exploded somewhere above the forest floor. The blast flattened 80 million trees over an area of 800 square miles. And oddly enough, the explosion only affected trees. The undergrowth and shrubbery were completely untouched. But where did such a powerful explosion come from? That question has remained unanswered for more than a century. There have been many theories over the years, but the truth is that whatever caused the Tunguska event, as it's now called, remains unknown. But let's start with the leading theory. According to NASA, the most likely cause of the Tunguska explosion was a meteor that exploded in the atmosphere before it could reach the ground. We know that meteors are very common. Every year, Earth's atmosphere burns up about 48 tons of space debris. Most of this is very small stuff, but occasionally we get a big one. And when it enters the atmosphere, it creates a bright streak of light as it burns up. Sometimes these meteors survive the trip through the atmosphere and crash into the ground. The Tunguska event, however, was not the result of a meteor strike. Instead, it was the result of a meteor that exploded while still in the atmosphere. But why did it explode? Well, imagine a meteor coming into the Earth's atmosphere at high speed. If it was really big, it would make it through the atmosphere intact. But if it was small, it would burn up completely. However, there's a sweet spot in between those two extremes. If a meteor is about the size of a house, it won't burn up entirely, but it also won't make it through the atmosphere unharmed. The air molecules will slow it down so much that it simply explodes. And that's what likely happened to the meteor that caused the Tunguska explosion. It was traveling at high speed when it hit the atmosphere. But rather than slowing it down, the friction generated by the atmosphere heated the meteor until it exploded. But why does the explosion only affect trees? It might seem odd that the shockwave of an explosion could spare the underbrush while flattening an entire forest. But it makes sense if you think about it. The force of the explosion was focused on tree level. Anything below that was protected by the trees, while anything above it was beyond the reach of the explosion. Tall trees near the epicenter were vaporized, while smaller shrubs and bushes were left completely unscathed. But if the meteor was hot enough, it may have burned some of the vegetation too. But what kind of meteor was it? According to experts, it was probably an iron meteor. Most meteors are made of rock, but some are primarily composed of iron. These are known as stony iron meteorites because they contain both iron and silicate minerals. One of the most famous examples is the famous Barringer crater in Arizona. It's widely believed to have been formed by a stony iron meteorite. Iron meteorites are thought to have originated from the cores of dead asteroids that broke apart millions of years ago. Since they're so dense, they don't burn up in the atmosphere as quickly as rocky meteorites. That means they could be much bigger without burning up completely. If the meteor that caused the Tunguska explosion was around 66 feet wide, it could have weighed as much as 370,000 tons. For reference, that's about twice the weight of the largest object ever moved by an Earth-moving machine. But meteors aren't the only thing that could have caused such a large explosion. Some scientists theorize that the Tunguska event was caused by a comet. Comets are made of ice and dust, which makes them much lighter than an iron meteorite of the same size. Because of their composition, comets tend to travel much slower. But if they're big enough, they can be just as destructive. And since they're made of ice, comets don't burn up as much as they freeze up. That means that a large comet that exploded over Siberia wouldn't have vaporized like a meteor. Instead, it would have exploded into a billion pieces of ice. According to one theory, the comet fragmented after passing close to Earth's orbit. The pieces rained down on Siberia, causing the explosion. Others believe that a single piece broke off and exploded after entering the atmosphere. Either way, the explosion would have been huge. But comets aren't the only potential cause. Some scientists have even suggested that the Tunguska event was caused by alien spacecraft. Of course, there's no evidence to support this theory. But proponents point out that there are other alleged UFO sightings around the same time. Furthermore, they say that the meteor theory doesn't explain why only trees were affected. However, this theory fails to explain why no one saw fragments of the supposed spaceship after the explosion. But wait, there's more. The people who lived in the region claimed that strange lights had been spotted in the sky in the days leading up to the explosion. Could this have been the alien spaceship preparing to land before it exploded? There's really no way of knowing. And unfortunately, it's unlikely that we'll ever find out. What we do know is that the Tunguska event was the loudest explosion ever recorded by human beings. Its shockwave could be heard nearly 600 miles away. It was one of the biggest natural disasters of the 20th century, but it didn't take any lives. The remote location of the blast zone meant that no one died as a direct result of the explosion. That being said, the effects of the explosion could be felt for years. For weeks after the event, the people of Siberia saw a haze in the sky. It was a thick fog that covered the landscape and made it difficult to see. It took several weeks to dissipate, and even then, the sky wasn't quite right. People saw strange lights and heard echoes of the explosion for years. They even reported seeing large numbers of fish floating in local rivers and lakes. Apparently, the explosion disturbed the fish so much that they jumped out of the water and died. And yet, for all the devastation it wrought, the Tunguska event was never officially investigated. The first investigation into the explosion wasn't launched until 3 years after it happened. Even then, it was only conducted to find out whether or not the explosion could be blamed on Russia's enemies. When the officials learned that it happened in an uninhabited part of Siberia, they lost interest. That meant that nobody properly investigated the site for decades. It wasn't until the Cold War ended that the Russian government allowed Western scientists to visit the site. By that point, however, most of the debris had already been cleared away by loggers. All that was left was a vast forest of dead trees and a few boulders. But some scientists say that these aren't even related to the Tunguska event. They believe that the boulders were placed there by loggers to mark the blast zone, while the trees died as a result of the logging, not the explosion. It's unclear whether the Tunguska event killed any people, but it did kill one animal. In 2007, a team of scientists discovered a mass grave of 800 reindeer, about 6 miles from the epicenter of the explosion. The reindeer died from injuries sustained during the blast. They were the closest living things to the explosion. The fact that they were buried together led some to believe that the Tunguska event somehow triggered a mass panic among the reindeer. So, what's the real cause of the Tunguska explosion? The truth is, we simply don't know. While scientists have plenty of theories, the most likely explanation is a meteor explosion. But the details are unknown. How big was the meteor? How fast was it going? What was it made of? These are the questions that scientists hope to answer one day. But for now, the Tunguska event remains one of the greatest mysteries of our age, an explosion without a source, a mystery without an answer. Now watch. This is how the world would end. Or check out biggest volcano eruption in history. You won't believe what actually happened.